Hey, welcome to the Dad Complex. I'm Jonathan Silva, and today I have my friend Tom Couture on. He's a father of 5 and a mortgage loan officer at Texas Tech Federal Credit Union here in Lubbock, Texas. We've been friends for a couple of years, and he's really been someone that I've looked up to and admired and respected, both professionally and as a father. So I'm excited to have him on and have this conversation. I really hope you enjoy it. Tom, welcome to the podcast. It's called the Dad Complex.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Tom,
Great to be here.
We've known each other for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. You are a dad to 1 girl and 4 boys.
Right.
And I say girl and boys, but really it's woman
Yes.
and men.
Women and men. Yeah. The oldest one is 40 and the youngest one is 28.
That's crazy, man. And everybody's doing, like, I'm excited to have you on because most of the people that I've had on so far, we've all had young children.
Yeah.
And you have adult children.
Right.
And they're all, from what I can tell, are all very successful in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Been very lucky.
And it's wide ranging.
Yeah.
You've got a super talented, creative, and I would even say like philanthropist.
Yes. Yeah.
And
He
Jeremy.
is my youngest. Yep.
And then I personally also know David,
Right.
who's a very successful
Yep.
realtor.
Yep.
And then I don't know your other 2 kids.
So my daughter, who's the oldest, she is an executive at a big mortgage company in Austin.
Oh, okay.
So she's quite successful, and she's a single mom. She has a 14-year-old boy. And then David's the next one, and then Jeff is a youth pastor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and he and his wife just moved from Hobbs, New Mexico, down to Austin, and they're starting a church.
Nice.
And they have an 11-year-old boy, a 9-year-old boy, and a 7-year-old boy.
Man.
Yeah, and then Greg is the next one, and okay, you ready for this? Uh-huh. He is now my boss.
Wow.
Because he just got promoted at the credit union to the manager of the entire mortgage department. And so I tell people all the time now I'm having to pay for all the spankings that I gave out when he was little. But,
dude, there's like quite a few different topics in that I now I'm like, okay, we got a lot to touch on here.
Yeah.
But okay, so to clarify, you are a mortgage
Loan
officer at Texas Tech Federal Credit Union.
Correct. Yep.
We have done business together twice. Mm-hmm. Hopefully again very, very soon.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of you. I'm a huge fan of your team.
Oh, thanks.
Huge fan of your personality, and I've always enjoyed like running into you.
Yeah.
Because you have this like infectious smile and this like personality that's warming.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that's the same about you. I've said to more than one person, I love Jonathan and Kate. Just because you both, I remember we closed that first loan. I can't remember where we were, but it wasn't a title company. Was it in the house?
Yeah, we were at the house, yes.
Yeah. And I just remember that was the first time I met Kate. And I remember just feeling like it was my home that I was walking into because of you guys.
Yeah, that was a super personal experience. That was really cool. I enjoyed it as well. Do you have any other ventures or any other like things that, I mean, I know that takes up a lot of your time.
Well, so it's interesting because just over the last 4 or 5 years, I've gotten into being coached in my business and I've fallen in love with the concept. So I'm branching out a little bit into doing some coaching and some mentoring, which just lights me up. I love it.
That's cool. And so are you looking more towards within the financial realm or life coaching in general?
Pretty much life coaching, because organically I have 5 different people that call me every single month. One of them is a resident doctor. One of them's an insurance guy. One of them is in the mortgage business. So it's just, and it's more about life stuff.
Man, I'm going to have to start calling you more. Just don't charge me for it.
Okay. I'm not charging anybody at the moment, so.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out. So where are you from originally?
I was born and raised in Montpelier, Vermont. So that's the capital city of Vermont. It's a town of 8,000 people. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the house that my mother grew up in, and my grandmother grew up in, and my great-grandfather grew up in, and my great-great-grandfather built.
Wow.
So it's like 250 years old. And then when I got married, I moved up the street into a house about 10 doors up the street. So until I was 28, I never lived or did anything except for a little town in Vermont.
Wow.
Then I moved to Lubbock, Texas.
Why? And I love Lubbock. I don't mean why in a negative way, but
it was a big thing. Well, I knew some people here through both business connections. Back then, everything was done on the phone.
Rolodex.
Rolodex and phone, yeah. I don't own a Rolodex anymore, I promise. I have learned to be in the 21st century. But, and then some people through a church that I knew.
Okay.
And there just came an opportunity here that was back in those days, which was the 84, I guess, when I moved here, 85. The industry in Vermont wasn't very lucrative. And I got the opportunity for a job here at Plains when it was a small little bank back in the 80s. And it was double the pay. So just picked up and moved.
Boom. And I'm sure much cheaper to live here than Vermont even then.
Yeah. And Mary, my former wife, she had lived in the Southwest before, so it was no big deal for her. It was a huge shock for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's funny, so it's cold outside right now, and I let you in. I was like, dude, I'm so sorry for making you wait outside. And you're like, this isn't cold.
No, it wasn't cold. The wind's a little bit nippy, but because you don't get that up in the Northeast. But
right.
I mean, we lived through 35 and 40 below zero every night of the month of January when we were kids.
That's insane.
Yeah.
There are two places for Kate and I that we would absolutely move to. Not anymore. Not that since Tadpole has started. Mm-hmm. But we've always wanted to move to like Massachusetts. We love Boston. Mm-hmm. Would live there in a second. And then like as far as like similar lifestyles but different would be Kansas City.
Oh yeah,
I love Kansas City.
Yeah, great barbecue.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So when you moved to Lubbock, were you childless? You were married.
No, my daughter was 2.5, and David, the realtor, was a baby.
So what was that? How did like being a father factor into your decision to move?
Well, just because I knew, and at the time their mom didn't work, she stayed home with them, and I just knew that we needed some more economics to be able to raise kids. And we didn't at the time know we were going to end up having 5. That was a little bit of an interesting thing because we just had the one girl and Mary wanted another girl and it kept being a boy. And finally after number 5, I said, there's no more.
Wow. That's so funny.
Yeah. So no, it was mostly because of economics and wanting to be, not that Montpelier was a great place to raise kids, but, we knew people here, a few people here, and knew that this was a great place to raise kids too.
Yeah. Was there ever a point, like, after you moved here that you thought, especially after you got maybe a little bit less naive, that you're like, that was a really dumb decision?
No, but there was a 3-year period of time that we moved back up to the Northeast in upstate New York, right up on the St. Lawrence River, and it was more just because of missing family.
Yeah. And
I kept my job here and worked remote. I was probably one of the very first remote workers ever.
That's insane.
Yeah, because when I went, the company I was working for at the time was called McAfee Mortgage. And when I went to the owners and said, we're moving, they said, well, you're not giving up your job. We'll figure out a way to do it from up there. Because at that time I was more in administrative stuff.
Yeah.
So, man, let me tell you, we went through a lot of fax machine paper.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, because I have I grew up, I mean, I remember times before cell phones, and I remember the big cell phones.
Yep.
And we still had tons of family friends, and our family still had the I don't even know what they're called, the rotating dial.
Rotary phone.
Rotary phone, yeah. But I have never experienced what life was like without email.
Yeah.
Understanding what email was.
Well, just give you a little, the way that I found the job here was because I was at a company up there, and we, just like you do now, we bought and sold loans, paper, and it was all done over the phone. I would call all over the country, community banks, and say, hey, you got any loans for me to buy today? And one of them was Plains Capital here, and the lady on the other end here that sold the loans was going to retire. And because I knew the business, I'd been in the business about 8 years by then, I was a great candidate for that job. So, but yeah, I remember the days, and you're going to laugh at this, but we had paper in the typewriter that was 5 copies. There was a white copy, a yellow called Canary, a green copy, a pink copy, and an orange copy. and you did a loan application on the typewriter, and if you messed it up, you had to yank it out and put another one in and start over again.
Yeah. Well, and I know that like I've worked for a company previously where we had to order carbon copy.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
Today is a much better
yeah, it really
process.
is. And that even like working with companies that still do carbon copy, it's funny because it's a different, they still use typesetters and it's a different world, man.
Yep, it is.
So your career path really hasn't changed much over you've stayed within financial.
I got out of high school and for, 10 months or so worked in a supermarket. Mm-hmm. And then this job came up at the mortgage department of a big life insurance company. So from then to now, I've only done mortgage.
And
47 years.
Did you have kids after you had already started your career?
Yes. Yep. Let's see. First one was born in 82. So I was probably 5-6 years into my career when she was born.
Okay. Yep. So what were struggles that you had when they were young and not starting your career, but your career is pretty demanding.
Yeah. Well, and back then I was more in an administrative role, so it wasn't quite as demanding. Now it's like we said before, 24/7 just about. But so it was actually mostly economic because wages weren't very high up there, and like I said, my former wife didn't work outside the home. She worked at home, of course, like any mother, but. So it was more economic struggles, and that was really why I felt okay about picking up and moving. Believe me, all of my siblings, and at the time my dad was still alive, my mom was not, but they did not like it because we all were, just
you're all there.
Yeah, and the story about all of us growing up in that 5-generation house, So they didn't like it that we were moving all the way to Texas, but it was the right thing for us to do. And I don't regret at all. I mean, Texas is home to all 5 of my kids because the 2 older ones don't remember living anywhere but Texas, and the other ones were born here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I make this point often now that we have Tadpole and we speak at Tech often, and I say all the fortunes that I have or all the opportunities that my family has had in our careers are honestly very directly correlated to being in Lubbock. Mm-hmm. The experiences I've had professionally, I don't think would ever happen anywhere else in any other market.
Yeah. Well, Lubbock is so relational.
Yes.
So when we opened up remarking about having a warm personality, you do that in this town and people are drawn to you. Mm-hmm. And they want to do business with Tadpole because you and Kate and whoever else that's here makes them feel warm and welcome. Right,
and you almost feel bad. And that's what I love about Lubbock, and what I love about people is that if you do a really good job, which is something you do, and I'd love to dive into that more in the way that you see your career and what you do. But when you do a really good job and you take care of people and just do good and are genuine about what you're doing, you're going to be successful.
Yeah. So even recently, that's come home to me a lot more because, and I won't go into a long story about it, but there's throughout the 1900s and into the 2000s, there's been different times in our economy and different ways of expressing economy and economics and whatnot. I mean, for instance, from in the early 1900s, it was all about inventions and creating things and industry, and that's cars were invented, all that. Right. Well, now I believe we're in something that I would call the purpose economy. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean people want now to know that you have their back, that you're going to take care of them in commerce. They want that.
Right.
They want that at home too. They want that in their church. They want that in their social circles. But in commerce, especially younger people, value that feeling that they're being taken care of. And so I believe that the people that do that for others are going to be the ones that succeed in business going forward.
Yeah, there's no like scheming anymore.
Right.
And I have a big stack of old Life magazines over there.
Yep.
And my favorite advertisements from back then are like the cigarette ads.
Yeah.
And they make fun of quitters in a lot of them.
Yep.
Like cigarette, Lucky Strike cigarettes. They're not for quitters.
Yeah,
or,
right.
Stuff like that. And it's so bold and really it's beautiful artwork.
Believe me, I remember.
Beautiful letters.
That was when I was a kid and growing up. And I mean, things come back to you. Like when you said Lucky Strike, I thought LSMFT. Lucky Strike means fine tobacco. Why is that still in my head at 65 years old? I don't know.
That's so cool.
Because I've never smoked a cigarette in my life. But
Yeah, but it was good advertising, but at the same time, a total lie.
Yeah, exactly.
They knew that they were paying doctors, like that.
Yep.
And that doesn't work anymore.
No, it doesn't.
The big schemes are like marking, saying everything's on sale, but really it's the same. You look online and now you can find that that's not true.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I love this. That's what I love about marketing now is that it's not even necessarily always about figuring out these great deals and doing this and putting spins on things. It's being able to tell a story of the business owners that are working hard, that are
create a brand of who you are, and if people are drawn to who you are, they're going to want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about your family. 5 generations. You're the first one to move away. What was it like growing up in a home like that?
Oh, so it was great. It's funny. My older brother and I were on the phone last night, and we were talking about that. And back in the '60s, it was different. So I'm sure you're this way with your kids. I'm this way with my kids. I have a relationship with my kids. Now that they're adults, we're friends, and maybe confidant, maybe advisor, mentor, but still friends. I learn a lot from my kids. Back in the '60s, that wasn't the way it was. The way it was in the '60s was your parents fed you, clothed you, educated you, and sent you on your way. And what I was saying to my brother last night, because my mom especially, she died quite young, but what I remember from her, she knew tough love, big time,
Yeah.
And I don't think we had that kind of I don't ever remember having a talk with my mom or dad about my feelings or about what I was going through. It was just, their business was to raise you, not befriend you, right?
Right.
And so and what I was going to say was I said to my brother last night, but the odd thing about that was never then nor now do I ever feel like I was unloved. We all felt loved somehow in that environment. And it's just a difference in, evolving and whatnot, I guess. But when I started having kids, I determined I was going to have a relationship with them, that I wanted to be part of their life, not just make them part of my life.
Were you the oddball, like within your colleagues, as far as the way that you parented?
Maybe. I don't know for sure if I was the oddball. I think that was a time of transition. My kids were all born in the 80s. No, Jeremy was born in the early 90s, but 80s and 90s. And I think that we as a culture and a society kind of have evolved during that time a lot. I grew up in the 60s and 70s and the hippies and the Vietnam War and the world was going through some turmoil. Mm-hmm. And we were just like, hey, can I ride my bike downtown, Mom? It was, we didn't even know really that all that was going on. But now in the age of internet and, 24-hour news cycles and all that, everybody knows everything. And if I could offer one piece of advice, it would be don't believe everything you hear and see on the TV.
Yeah. Well, I'm genuinely surprised because I don't know too many dads in your generation, and maybe I just haven't talked to them enough that have that relationship. Maybe more so girl dads than boy dads, but like I don't necessarily. I love my dad, and we're cool, but we're not necessarily like tight.
Well, I'd have to say that I was intentional about that because I guess even though I didn't feel unloved and I knew that I was loved and taken care of, I did sort of miss having, that place where I could go, and if something was bugging me or whatever, I could maybe talk to them. We just didn't have that.
Yeah.
And I was intentional about making sure that I made a place for my kids to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And what's crazy is you talking about your son being your boss now. It's just,
Yeah.
I called my dad the other day because we had landed a client that to us was like, it was exciting.
Yeah.
It was like, yes. And we still get excited about every single client, but this one particular client was one that like came out of left field, and they came to us, and it was just really
Nice.
like, okay, things are working. So anyways, I called him and I said, man, something really cool happened, and he doesn't really understand it all. And,
Yeah.
but I called him, and I just, for whatever reason, I was feeling sentimental, and I just said, thank you for all the opportunities that you gave us. Like, we weren't ever rich. We were very, working class economically. We weren't. We never wanted, but they worked hard. Like my dad grew up very poor in Mexico, and he would steal stuff to feed his family. Like he would steal food, and he would sell gum on the side of the street and shine shoes, and they really struggled. So I know that like as men or as mothers and fathers, our goal is always to want more for our kids and provide better for them. And that was my conversation with him was thank you. Like if you ever felt like you didn't or whatever, I just want you to know that like
that's awesome.
I see that.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing for my girls.
Yep.
You've obviously done it. You've done it super successfully.
Tried, yeah.
I mean, what was that like? I guess you probably already saw it, so it's not like it was a surprise. But seeing your son get that promotion, or seeing David maybe sell his first house, or Jeremy be so successful with the everything that he's doing, and to be a full-time musician is also it's a feat. But he's really doing it.
Yeah, he's just doing it, and he's doing well at it. Well, it's exciting. Back to what you said, you always want better for your kids than you ever had, right? And I don't know that I really thought about that part consciously. It just, I will say, even though there wasn't that, in my growing up, there wasn't that personal type relationship with my dad, he always modeled family values, So there wasn't a whole lot to do. Sunday afternoon, he'd load us all in the station wagon and just take us for a drive, and we were like you. We didn't have a lot. I remember as a kid, my mother handing me his paycheck and making me go down to the bank downtown and cash it, and it was like less than $100 a week, and he had 6 kids, So I say that I feel like I didn't really consciously think about, do I want to make sure my kids had more than I had? No, I think it was more like displaying those same family values and being there for them. One of the things that I think, if I had to give one piece of parenting advice that meant the most to me, it was this. When they were old enough to, be in school and have problems and do this and do that, I don't know how I figured this out, but I did. When they don't want to talk about it, you can't force them to. And when they do want to talk about it, you better be ready to listen, even if it's 11:30 at night and you're dead tired.
Yeah.
And I think if you interviewed all 5 of my kids right now, they would say that one thing: Dad was always there to listen to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's what built relationship. And then the other thing I always told them, and I'm sure you've heard this before, I don't even know where I picked this up, heard it from somebody, but I would tell them when they did something really, there goes the cuss words, I was going to say really fucking stupid, or when they did something really good, I would say to them, you know what, because one of the things that my kids always laugh about is that if I ever pulled out the D word, disappointment, that was what melted them, not the spankings. Anyway, so I would always say to them, look, there's not one thing in this world that you can do that would make me love you any more than I already do. And there's also not one thing in this world you could do that would make me love you any less than I already do.
Yeah.
And I think that acceptance is probably the biggest key. You know, that doesn't mean you condone bad behavior.
Right.
But believe me, well, I was laughing earlier with you about paying for all the spankings I gave my now current boss. But so you don't condone bad behavior, you correct bad behavior, but you still accept the person. You do that as an adult.
Yeah.
You know, somebody says something, does something, you have to forgive them. You don't just condemn them as a human. You just realize they just screwed up. You know?
Yeah.
And you have to do that with your kids too, because that builds character.
Well, it's interesting because, especially in today's world where cancel culture
Yes.
is like a thing. For better or worse, I mean, are there some people that shouldn't earn money, off of their personality? Probably,
Yeah.
but has it gone a little too far? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
it feels like it has.
and I think I see that more and more now where like people are writing off their parents or like toxic parents. And I don't blame them. I mean, I think if you have a toxic relationship or something, but on the other end of that, that's something that as parents, that's never an option.
Right.
I don't think. Like
Yep.
to me, there really is nothing that my kids couldn't do or could do that would make me say,
Write them off. Yeah.
yeah, or that would make me write them off.
Yeah.
I could see it on the reverse side because I do feel a heavy responsibility of being a good example
Yeah.
to them.
Yeah.
And being the type of man that, I have 2 girls. So like being the type of man that I want them to marry or the type of man or people
Yep.
that I want them to surround themselves with.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a ton of responsibility there, but
Well, one major principle in this world is that what you put out is what you get back. That applies to everything. So you're putting out that there's nothing that those girls could do that would make you write them off. And no matter what they go through as teenagers, because there'll be times when they hate you,
yeah.
but no matter what they go through, they'll come back to not writing you off because that's what you did for them.
Yeah.
It really makes sense.
So when you were younger and building your career, and we were talking earlier about how you're still working on stuff. You're still working on communication and like making sure you have the right team members in place to take care of your customers. What has being if it has, maybe it hasn't, but has being a father affected the way that you do business or the way that you conduct yourself professionally?
That's really a good question.
Yeah. And maybe you have to think back
Yeah.
further even.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of correlation between the two. I mean, obviously one much deeper because, your kids are, part of you, right? And actually yesterday I was at a retirement party for a good friend of mine at Citibank, and his whole family, his kids and his wife and his grandkids were all over on one side, and then all the people that he'd affected in his career were over there. And he made the comment, he said, you're all just like family to me. I have to live with these over here, meaning his flesh and blood family.
Yeah.
I don't have to live with you guys, but I like to. And I think that maybe that's the one thing about your question that is true is that, again, if you value people, not just your customers, but your coworkers, then, it's a little different than family, but it's it's a different flavor of family, I think.
Right.
And so, I don't know. I feel like whether it's your kids or your spouse or your coworkers or your customers, if you value people and strive to see the good stuff in them and the positive stuff in them, then at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you made a mistake or whether you didn't meet their need or whether you whatever. If you value them, you'll always come back to working hard to do the best you can do. Because we're all going to fail at different things. So you gotta chalk it up to I did the best I could.
Yeah.
So,
what's it like? You mentioned earlier that you're no longer with your wife.
right.
When did that happen?
That was about 16 years ago. Jeremy was 12, and Greg, the one I work with now, is 17, and the other 3 were on their own already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was that like, or how did that affect you?
Wow, it was pretty devastating because I was my idea was this is a lifetime thing, right? And marriage, and so it felt a lot like a failure, really did. And I remember there's we all have emotions, right? And as a man, you're not supposed to display them, and you're not supposed to show them, and all that. Well, I remember only like 3 times in my life where I cried uncontrollably and just I couldn't stop myself. And one of them was the day or the evening that I told my 5 kids that their mother and I we're not going to be together anymore.
Yeah.
And it even still gets me a little emotional, but it was hard. It really was. It was, unfortunately, it was a situation that wasn't tenable any longer. We'd worked and worked and worked to try to fix it. And I don't need to obviously go into details on any of that, but and now, years later, she and I, when the kids are having a birthday or the grandkids or whatever, we can be together and do things together now. Just we couldn't then.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any sort of like friendship now, or is it still very like
a very shallow friendship? Like we don't have any in-depth discussion, but I have absolutely no angst about being, with their mom when we do a family thing together or whatever.
Yeah.
But otherwise than those things, no, we never hang out together.
Yeah. So my parents divorced when I was, I know we had Penelope. I can't remember exactly how old I was, maybe like 22. And I remember on this side of it feeling like it was hard. I didn't want to take it. I remember when they called me and they told me, I was so mad. I was just like,
really?
Don't you think that you're going to bring anybody around my kids?
Oh, wow.
Do not, don't even try. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. I want y'all to be happy, but I want nothing to do with whatever it is.
I hadn't thought about that. Because in our situation, neither one of us have remarried. And people laugh at me because I say I'm the happiest single man on the planet.
Yeah.
I do my thing. I do my life. I'm happy. If I want to, if I wanted to just pick up this afternoon after this and go out of town and do whatever I want to do, I can do it. And that might sound a little selfish, but and still very dedicated and close to my kids, but I'm free to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, it was a thing where, at least in that moment, I was just mad and young and still just kind of hard to understand because it came out of left field for me. I think we knew, and there was a time when I was younger and still living with my parents that I was like, oh, you could kind of tell something was off, but then never felt like that again until the day that they told us. And, it was really strange, but for me, it ended up being a really positive experience. One, they're happy. My mom's super happy with who she's with, and I love the guy. I trust him, and the whole situation has ended up being really good for me as far as being a man and being able to reflect on things that not necessarily as a man, but as a spouse, as a partner, and seeing things that both of my parents did that I don't want to do.
Right.
In my relationship with Kate. And thankfully Kate's very vocal and opinionated, as much as I am. Yeah. So we have, we communicate, sometimes maybe not in the most healthy way.
Well, that's life.
But at the end of the day, we communicate, and I can't remember my parents ever fighting really. Yeah. In front of us or having a discussion or having a disagreement. And so we, as parents now, there's not a lot of hiding. Yeah. As far as our feelings between each other or whatever. Yeah. And our kids always know that we love each other and that we're, passionate about each other, but also they know that we're passionate. We can be passionately upset with each other too.
Yeah, right. Which that is healthy for them to see, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure we modeled that so great in my marriage, but
relationships are hard though.
Yeah, they are.
And I think that it's a common misconception, or I remember when we got married and people were like, well, just get through the first 3 years or just get through the first 5 years. Then after that, it's smooth sailing. And, I mean, unless your life is the exact same,
Yeah, right.
and you have no ambition or anything like
Yeah.
that, I could see that happening.
Well, yeah, look at
But-
going into the tadpole agency is a life-changing event, and so of course it affects home,
Yeah.
you know. But it seems like, a little off topic maybe, but it seems like you and Kate are very intentional about making sure that you make all those things work for your family and for your girls.
Yeah, that's definitely the motivation to
Yeah.
like, when we have a crappy day, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, but look at the big picture. Like today may be
Yeah.
rough, but we have to wake up tomorrow like it wasn't.
Right. And I think back to your question about how was it separating from my former wife, it was really more difficult because of what my impression was of what it was going to do to the kids, even though three
Yeah.
of them were young adults already. It was more about that for me than it was about the loss. I mean, later I went through the whole thing about the loss of the relationship and my marriage and that sort of thing. But really, honestly, the thing that made me cry that night so much was, how am I hurting my kids? But it got to a point where there was nothing left to do. So it was like, okay, so then I had to, and I know I've used this word several times, but I had to get intentional about figuring out how to help them through it.
Yeah.
Because like you just said, it really was hard on you. I know it was hard on them. And it's, as a dad, I think even a dad of adult kids, I think it's very valuable for at least part of your first thought in any situation be, what's going to benefit them, or what's going to hurt them, or how can I help them? Because even today, I mean, my kids tell me things sometimes I'm like, I don't really want to hear that. Thank you. I mean, because they're that close to me, but I still, as adults, I'll give you a great example. My daughter, so as a guy, whether it's your girls or whether it's Kate, and they come to you with something, and your first instinct is to fix it. I got to solve this problem, right? Because that's the way we're wired. And my daughter's been through a few things, with her 14-year-old, and I started out that way, went into parenting mode, and you need to do this, and could you do that, and what about this? And she's Dad, I'm calling you just because you're a sounding board. You're somebody I can unload on. I don't want you to fix it. And so it was a life lesson for me, even as an adult but offspring, to learn, wait a minute, you got to be what that person needs. Even with your kids, you got to figure out, what are they looking for right now? And don't force you on them. I don't even really know how to say it, but just be what they need at the time. And that's hard.
You're like punching me in the heart right now.
I don't mean to.
No, I mean, I need to hear it. As early as this morning, Kate was really frustrated, was running late. And whenever I get stressed out, I have to look at things black and white as much as I can.
Yep.
Like even, like buying a house, I have to look at things as black and white as possible so that I don't stress out.
Yep.
Like it's either a yes or a no.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah.
And I did that today.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we're gonna be late. It's fine.
Yeah.
Don't stress.
Yeah.
Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily always right. I mean, it helps me, but it doesn't help everybody else.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I've learned too, is that in those situations, our role is not to help me. I'm, when like my daughter, when she's struggling with her 14-year-old and no dad around, because he doesn't have a dad in the picture at all. The dad vamoosed whenever he found out that my daughter was pregnant, and he's never been involved. And so in that situation, she wasn't looking for me to fix my grandson. She was looking for me to feel her pain and to help her get through, love her and encourage her, not fix her. So I think that's hard as a guy. You just want to hey, I got a toolbox. I might even have 2 toolboxes, and I can fix this.
Yeah.
No.
Man, that's deep. I lost track. Sorry, I was just thinking about what you were saying, man.
Well,
But speaking of your grandson, what is it like being a grandkid or a grandkid? I mean, I'm sure you kind of are a grandkid. Probably more of a kid now than you were.
yeah.
Well, what's it like being a grandpa? And
It's the best.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I hear.
Well, and you know, everybody says when you say it's the best, the next line you hear is because you can give them back. No, it's the best because you can enjoy them. Like Greg's little guy is just turned a year old. And I don't really remember experiencing with my own kids the joys of like, they sent me a video yesterday of him at daycare, and there was music playing, and all the kids were on the mat, you know, on the floor with the teacher in the daycare place, and Ollie is his name, and he was dancing, you know, sit down dancing, and it made me giggle. It was just like great, right? And then as they get a little bit older, like David's two are Chase and Madison, and they live here in town, so I see them every week.
Yeah.
And to get to actually sit down and talk to them. I mean, I was so busy as a young dad with 14-year-old and 11-year-old and whatever else. It was hard to sit down and just talk to them. I made a point of doing it, but generally it was when they were struggling with something. But with the grandkids, it's more like I get to hear about their life and what they were having fun doing at school, or like Chase playing football or that sort of thing. So being a grandparent, or at least a grandfather, because I make one distinction in grandparenting. I tell my kids, and I probably get in huge freaking trouble for this on a podcast, but I tell my kids, babysitting is a grandmother's job, not a grandfather's job. I will go pick them up. I'll take them, do here, there, whatever, do things with them. But you're not dropping them off at my house and not show back up for 7 hours.
That's funny.
Well, just because I like to, this is probably one of my shortcomings. I like to, you know, control my own time and what I do, you know, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
and I spend time with the grandkids all the time, but I just, you know, I say, don't ask me to babysit. That's not my thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, but spending time with them, doing things, taking them someplace to do something they want to do, or just like every Sunday we get together, the ones that are here, after, you know, early afternoon, have either cook at the house or go out to eat, which Dad always pays, of course.
Yeah.
But and just sitting there at the table and talking to them it's the best.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites?
No, because they might listen to this. Here's what I do, and they've all caught on to me now, but I tell every single one of them that they're my favorite. And you know what's really weird about that? They don't care that I tell the other ones that they're my favorite. I don't know why. I don't know what the dynamic is there, but they love it. They just love hearing they're my favorite, even though they know I'm going to say it to every other one of them.
Yeah. I got that from Kate's dad, too. He does
did
that.
you?
He
Yeah.
did that to them, or to Andrew and Kate. I don't know if I'm breaking if y'all know that.
The guy code.
Yeah, I'm telling y'all now. But he does that, and it does make you feel special, I
Yeah,
think.
it does. And they don't care that it's not just them.
Yeah. And, you know, even going back to, like, you wanting to control it all the time, you're really all over the place. I mean, I saw you the other night at an event
Yep.
at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
And then as you were leaving, you're like, oh, I got to go to this other thing.
Yep.
Like, let's talk soon. But how do you, I think you're always on. Like, every time I've seen you, you're a consistent personality. But how do you wind down, or like, how do you wind up, or how do you wind down?
I love wine. So,
Yeah.
and this is probably not healthy, but I don't feel bad about it because it's only one. But almost every night, whatever time I get home, I'll sit down, maybe turn the TV on, maybe not. But I'm really big into listening to podcasts. I'll listen to your podcast.
Sweet. Okay.
Or self-development. I'm much better at listening to books than reading books, so I'll listen to books. Do that sort of. So I'll sit down with one of those things for 30 minutes with a glass of wine, almost every night, not every night.
Yeah.
And that's how I wind down, you know.
Yeah.
And then, really, my day starts early. I'm in bed by 10 o'clock, but unless it's an event that, you know, because almost every night of the week there's something.
Yeah.
But usually, people laugh at me because I'm not the stay out late partier guy but I'll show up at everything and I'll make sure that I, say hi to people and then, while they're staying there till midnight doing whatever, partying, I'm back home and I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
But I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So you're 60? 65.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. And earlier when we were talking, you said, I'll never retire.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I love what I do and I love being with people and I love helping people. It's my thing. And I definitely will change, what I do. My plan is to have my team at work so dialed in that they can handle all the day-to-day paperwork stuff and all that with the mortgage business so that I can handle relationships because that's what lights me up.
Yeah.
I've always been that way, but I didn't have the freedom to spend a lot of time at it earlier in life. And so that's why, in fact, I was at lunch with one of my kids today, and I was telling him that I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said, well, I got it all planned out. I'm going to, because someone we know recently was actually a sister-in-law of mine. Like, she was perfectly healthy. She got something wrong with her leg. She went to the doctor. She had some terrible cancer, and 5 weeks later, she was dead.
Wow.
71 years old. And we were talking about that, and I said, that's not for me. I've got this planned out. And I don't know if it'll work out this way, but I'm going to expect it. Mm-hmm. I said, I'm going to be 95 years old, perfectly healthy, and one night I'm going to bed, and the next morning you won't be able to get me on the phone because I will have peacefully died at night. And that's going to be the end of that. So I plan on another 30 good years.
Yeah.
So back to your question, I don't want to just sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
I don't want to be going 80 hours a week.
Right.
Forever, but I think I can be of a benefit to myself and to others for a long time.
What's the secret to looking as good as you do at 65?
Well, one thing is I better lose a little weight because I've gotten a little fat, but I don't know. I think because I've always attributed a lot of that to because I was clued into my kids, it keeps them a younger mindset. When they were little and when they were growing up and now that they're adults and they're grandkids, I'll give you one example. When the kids were growing up, people would ask me, what kind of music do you listen to? And I'd say, whatever music my kids listening to. Because I felt like if I had something like that I could, connect with them on, that would keep me relevant in their lives. So I think that the only secret I can say is, I've never abused myself, drugs or cigarettes or any of that stuff, but I just keep in a younger mindset. Yeah. I don't think, you know what? You're going to laugh at me, but I just don't even believe I'm 65 years old. I mean,
I didn't believe it when you said it.
I don't feel like it, know? Now, I don't feel as young and great looking as you, but I just don't feel like I'm 65. When my grandparents were 65, I thought they were ancient. Of course, different perspective because I was a kid, but now I think, oh my gosh, wow. I don't know. But I just think mindset has a lot to do with it. And I work on that every single day. Yeah. That's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning.
There's also a really big difference between people that are connected and like openly or like have to actively work within technology opposed to people that don't have to work with technology. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right because it's always changing. You always got to learn. And that's what I think goes wrong with people that retire and just then they don't know what they're going to do with their life. Your brain slows down to the point where you're not in that mindset anymore and you start, maybe it's attitude, but things start going downhill.
Yeah, you're not learning anymore.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with your physical well-being too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, what's your best pro tip for being a dad and like growing a career at the same time?
Well, I would have to say probably I didn't do this well as a younger dad. And so if you're a younger dad, listen to this. But be sure that you spend time focusing on the kids and your marriage, hopefully too, while you're growing your career at the same time, and understand that while your career is ultimately necessary so that you can, raise your family and economically fund all the things that you need to fund for kids and your family. Well, that's so important, but it's not important enough to not have a relationship with your kids. So figure out a balance between those where you can, and it's not, I don't think you have to spend 60 hours a week with your kids. I think you have to be there present when you're with them. So there was times in my life, in my younger life, where I was working 2 jobs because we had to have that extra income. But when I was with them, I was present. And
Right.
I think that magnifies the effect of the time that you're with them, maybe.
Absolutely.
I think. And so, I think, and maybe you get one of my kids sitting on this couch and I would be proven wrong. I don't know, but I think they would all tell you that when we're with Dad's with us.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my biggest pro tip.
It's a good one, man. And I appreciate you coming on. And I do want to talk a few things, like just some shout outs. So first of all, for all your mortgage loan needs,
Yep.
you're the man.
Well, thank you.
You know?
Yes, I love doing that.
You've got a great team. And I've personally worked with Kelly Prayer on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Prayer,
Yep.
Prayer.
Prayer.
She's phenomenal.
Yes,
She's
you
a
did.
sweetheart.
Yep.
Always on top of it. And I've really enjoyed working with you on mortgages in the past. So I hope that, any listeners would consider working with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before anybody else.
I would love that. I love doing that. One of my joys in life is helping people in that space realize or achieve their dream of owning a home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've done it for us, and dream homes. So like homes that we're super proud of. But then, so David's a real estate agent.
Mm-hmm.
David, and I think I've said your last name, a few different ways.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Well, the right way to pronounce it is the way Jeremy does, Couture.
Uh-huh.
It's a French word.
Uh-huh.
But when we moved here to Texas, West Texans couldn't say that. And so we kind of acquiesced to Couture.
Couture.
So I'll answer to anything. But yeah, the right way to pronounce it is Couture.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So David Couture.
Yep.
And he is a real estate agent. I'm sure you can Facebook him and find him.
Yep, Taylor Reed Agency and with the Lindsay Bartley.
Okay.
And he does very well. He's a good guy.
And someone who I recently connected with, and I saw him perform a while ago with the full band, and he was playing a cover of a song that I really love, and he was just killing it. And Jeremy has swag.
Yeah, he does.
That dude has an unnerving amount of swag,
yeah.
And that's just what it is. Like he has his own style,
Yep.
I think.
Oh yeah.
Like, as far as fashion and just personality and everything, he's a very unique personality. He's definitely your kid as far as looks.
Yeah.
But he's a very unique person. But above all, like the dude's got swag, he's got confidence, and he's got the talent and skill to back every part of it up.
Yep.
So I know that this is something you sponsor, and the way we met him was you were telling us about it. We got to sponsor it.
Yep.
But the Lubbock Live Music Festival,
yep.
Which is doing incredible things for our community.
It is, yeah. This year, he just announced that he was able to raise, and this is after all the bills were paid for the event, and it's it costs a lot.
Yeah.
I remember almost 2 years ago now, I had to have some major surgery, and the kids came over, when I got home from the hospital and stayed with me, and he came and spent one night. And the next morning, when we both woke up, he came in and sat in my room. I have a recliner in my room besides the bed. Anyway, he sat down and he starts telling me all this stuff he had put together for this Lubbock Live Festival. Yeah. And I was like, who are you and what have you done with Jeremy? Because, it was all business stuff. And he had it all. Like he had a board of directors and he had a 501c3. He had all. Anyway, long story. But Yeah, he just announced that he donated $13,000 to, I'll say the name wrong, but East Lubbock
Lubbock Art House.
Art House, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I had never heard of the East Lubbock Art House until I spoke with Jeremy, and we're actually hoping to do some other things with them as Tadpole. But what a really, really cool charity and super needed in our community.
The origin of that was when he got out of, he studied music at Texas Tech, and when he got out of college and started in the music community here in Lubbock, he realized how much talent there is in Lubbock. And his whole thing was he wanted to showcase local talent. Mm-hmm. And then he got the idea, well, we could do that and raise money for some good causes. So he's going to keep doing it, and I'm very proud of him.
Well, and I mean, it's been incredible, and I think it's only going to grow over the years.
Yeah.
And the fact that he it's not like, first of all, Lubbock has a ton of great artists over time. I mean, huge artists, huge musicians that have just made huge impacts, honestly, on the world.
Yep.
And if people aren't familiar with that side of Lubbock, I mean, Lubbock really has been pumping out some incredible musicians for the past
70 years.
Yeah, 70 years. Beyond Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
But Lubbock Live, at least so far, has featured artists that I would say 90% of the community do not know.
Right, and that was his vision, to start showcasing them so the community would learn about them.
Yeah, and so to get to raise that much money and pay off all the funds and what it actually takes to make it happen, I mean, that really is a huge feat.
Yep. He's doing a great job.
He's doing an incredible job, and it's, you can tell it's a very selfless
Well,
thing.
he has passion about it. That's what drives him.
Yeah.
You know? Music is his passion. I remember back to the point of his mother and I divorcing. When he was a junior in college, he had to write an essay on why he loved music. All the kids had to do it. And he brought it home to me because he lived with me until his senior year, and then he moved out finally. But I said that like it was, but anyway. He handed me that essay, and I read it, and the whole thing was about how music got him through the pain. And so that's why he has passion about it, because it was his salvation when his world was falling apart.
Yeah. How did, and I know, like, we need, this is going pretty long, but how did you, I grew up in music and I had supportive parents. Thankfully, they didn't necessarily have funds to support me that way, but they were like, cool, yeah, go do what you want to do. What was that like, fostering that?
Well, it was a little bit hard financially because his degree is in cello performance, and I don't know if you know, but cellos are not cheap. Mm-mm. And he had a fairly cheap one, and then his professor at Tech called me and said, we need to find Jeremy a better cello because he's outplaying that cello that he had. And so I had to sort of hawk my life back then to buy him a cello. So it was a little bit hard that way, but never a sacrifice really, because I saw what it was for him, what it did for him.
Yeah. It's probably easier too when it I mean, maybe not when it's classical music and it's like really beautiful opposed to like,
oh yeah.
You know, I came home to my parents with like rock music and
well, and when he was 13, it wasn't beautiful, but as he got older, it was. But yeah.
Man, well, it's really cool. And Tom, I really appreciate you for coming out, man.
Oh my gosh, well, thank you.
I know we've been needing to just resync for a long time.
Yeah.
So this was cool, and I'm glad I got to know you better.
Same here. Like I told you earlier, I don't know. So you and I actually met at the West Texas Home Builders Association on that golf tournament committee, and we had to go to, was it Cardinals or wherever, and pick out gifts. And that was when I sort of, I hope this doesn't sound weird, but that's when I fell in love with you, because I just saw what a great spirit you have. No,
it was really cool, man. I was honestly really, I was nervous. To meet you there, because I was like, I gotta go to Academy with this guy, and I don't know what we're gonna talk about, and what if he's like rude, like he probably doesn't even want to do this either, or whatever, you know. And you were super welcoming, and immediately like asked about, you were like interested in me, and like just opened up this really great conversation.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. And like I said, you have a personality that is just attracting. You exude a really good.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome, and
vibe.
thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's kind of an honor to be part of this, just because I think your vision for this is going to grow, just like you were talking about, Jeremy.
Yeah, I hope so. It'll be cool, and I know that there's other, dads, and I'm sure you experienced this when you were a young dad, or it's like it's hard to talk to men, or it's hard to make friends with other dads.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just good to go into something knowing that what it's gonna be, knowing that you're gonna have maybe a tough conversation or a deep conversation, but ask questions that are genuine questions.
Yep, exactly.
So, anyways, well, thank you for joining me on the Dad Complex. This episode and this season, really, or whatever you want to call it, we're presented by Monomyth, and so that.
Nice.
I know we talked about that when you came in. Have you been there yet?
I have. I love that place.
Dude, it's so cool. I love the building.
And the bench out front, I don't know if they put that there or it was there, not that concrete bench with the tile on it. It's the coolest looking thing.
It's
right
really
there on the
cool.
street.
Really, really cool.
Yep.
But anyways, cool. Awesome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon.
All right.